craziest courtroom clips of all time. Sometimes the screams of killers are immensely satisfying, such as what happened with Erica Mae Butts and Shanita Latrice Cunningham. Both women were in court for the murder of a 3-year-old Serenity Richardson, who was in their care when they decided to discipline her in the most horrific way, by beating her with a belt and coat hanger for things like having a potty accident. Richardson died from her injuries. In court, Butts and Cunningham were about to get what was coming to them, and apparently they didn't know that murder lands you life in prison, since they collapsed on the floor, crying and screaming, and had to be carried and wheeled out. While Richardson's parents didn't get their hands on the two women, this next killer had to face a vengeful father. U.S. women's national gymnastics team Dr. Larry Nassar turned heads with his despicable case of sexually assaulting at least 265 young women who were a part of his team. The assault included him touching them inappropriately, including underage girls.
You put your ungloved hands all over my rear and slipped your thumb into the most private area of my body.
When Nassar was on trial, he had to face the wrath of one of the girl's fathers, who requested some time alone with Nassar. When the judge refused the father's offer, he took things into his own hands. Some don't wait until they're arrested. They show up to the courthouse themselves, like Keith Cavalier. Keith Cavalier wanted to contact the police to report stolen drug paraphernalia. So, he did what totally normal people do. Instead of calling 911 or walking into the police station, he took his truck and rammed right through a courthouse. The video proves that drugs were definitely involved somehow, right? As Keith just climbs out of his truck window and looks around as if he hadn't just crashed into a courthouse going 60 mph. He got what he wanted at least, when he got inside the courtroom and received jail time for his crime. While Cavalier ultimately didn't hurt anyone in court, Jeremy Christian fully intended to. Christian took the whole public freakout thing to a terrifyingly deadly level when he murdered 2 people on a train for simply defending against Christian's racist rants against minorities. In court, one of the witnesses absolutely destroyed Christian verbally. He made one last attempt at being the worst person you could ever meet in public by going on another rant, threatening to murder her. There was any doubt about him being a white supremacist, there wasn't any after this hearing. Sometimes the victims do get temporary justice in court, like what happened to Clifford Thomas. Clifford Thomas and Jasmine Gordon proved unfit to care for a child when they neglected Gordon's little daughter, Jamila, to the point of death. What they didn't realize, however, is that Jamila's biological father, Dwayne Smith, would come back with a vengeance when he noticed Thomas in court and decided to clap him right in the head. Thomas and Smith had to be separated in court before Smith landed in jail himself for revenge murder. While Smith's actions could never get his daughter back, at least he got some sense of satisfaction before Thomas and Gordon were sentenced up to 15 years in prison. Sometimes it's the judges themselves that get a metaphorical swing at the defendants, though. Like our next case. When a woman tried to present a case in court for a PPO that was apparently signed against her, the judge noted that she hadn't signed any PPO.
I am not stalking, Mr. Nicholas.
I haven't signed a PPO.
Stalking a man who might have scammed her, but her choice of words and attitude did not help.
I have a constitutional right to be heard.
On what basis? There is no case before me, ma'am.
The judge continued to snap back at her as the woman was getting more and more rude, with the judge finally going off to pretty much kick her out of the courtroom.
I highly suggest that you just exit my courtroom and go pay the sanctions before I find you in contempt.
This woman might not have been called a Karen, but she was nothing compared to Donna Cosal. Donna Cosal was in court because her daughter was on trial for drunk drive killing of Jerome Zerka. You'd think a mother would be heartbroken for her daughter, but instead, Donna Cosal started laughing and mocking the victim's family. Even her daughter didn't seem to find it amusing. The judge would not take this, absolutely demolishing Cosal before holding her in contempt of court with 93 days of jail time that made Cassell learn not to misbehave in court the hard way.
Because if you don't know how to act, you can go to jail. So leave.
Hopefully next time she learns what a proper court outfit is too. While this contempt in court was justified, some just didn't deserve it, like the attackers of Dale Williams. Dale Williams was in court for brutally murdering his ex-girlfriend, Elizabeth Pledger Stewart, by shooting her in a car after crashing his car into hers. What he didn't account for, however, was that Pledger Stewart had 2 sons who were more than ready to tear him apart, and he got to meet them in court. Pledger Stewart's 2 boys turned the courtroom into a UFC ring as they made quick work of Williams, literally dragging him on the floor and beating him senseless. While Williams totally deserved it, the 2 boys were unfortunately held in contempt for 30 days. It's fair to assume they think it was worth it, though. While fights in court aren't uncommon, a singing performance definitely is. After Brian David Mitchell was charged with the kidnapping of Elizabeth Smart, whom he held hostage for 9 months, he decided to creepily entertain the entire courtroom after holding complete silence when he suddenly broke out into song.
The time is far spent, there is little remaining.
The song was both funny and terrifying, especially when he really hit those high notes.
Then hasten ye heralds, go forward proclaiming, repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand!
Apparently, Smart described Mitchell as being very annoying during her captivity, and we can easily tell why. The only thing worse than a bad singer might just be a Karen. This Karen was in court acting very inappropriately.
You will be held in contempt of this court if you become disruptive.
Arguing and saying she doesn't care about possibly being held in contempt. When the judge had had enough, however, and gave her her rightful 10 days in contempt, the Karen goes feral and suddenly lunges at the judge. The judge's expression as the Karen is restrained is a classic, pure disgust in her eyes. No one was more notoriously annoying in court than Darrell Brooks, though. After the horrifying Waukesha Christmas parade attack, when Darrell Brooks ran his car through it, killing 6 people, a series of court hearings that boiled people's bloods ensued. In this one instance, Brooks could not stop arguing with the judge.
I am not the custodian. Bring it up with the clerk of court.
How
not
can I
addressing
bring it up with the clerk of court? How am I supposed to do that?
The judge had nerves of steel, though. She had to keep taking Brooks' comments and childish attitude before the whole thing turned into a screaming match.
I told you yesterday, as a courtesy that was provided to you, so that you would frankly not complain that you didn't get it as quickly as possible.
At least Brooks' mask prevented him from what Bass Webb did. After brutally murdering 2 police officers by running them over, Webb was facing a heartbroken judge who knew the 2 officers. Webb apparently couldn't face reality when the judge was just doing her job, and he straight up spits in her face. The judge gets quick revenge, though, as she brings him back just to see her wipe the spit away before giving him extra charges and a completely new trial for the spitting. A spit is damaging enough, but running through a courthouse is something else entirely. Just ask Herbert Bristol. After getting a court date for a drunk driving charge, Herbert Bristol decides to show up to court a few days early. Instead of taking a cab and showing up to follow the normal proceedings, he decides to smash his car right through the courthouse. Herbert might have been just presenting evidence, as he literally leaves his car inside the courtroom and walks out with a cigarette. Well, at least he didn't miss his court date. This level of disrespect in court can only be matched by Penelope Soto. Penelope Soto was on trial for drug charges, but this Barbie doll's head might not have been screwed on straight, as she treats the hearing as if it's a Glamour magazine interview. She ignores most of the judge's questions, laughs and twirls her hair, and even walks out at one point, thinking the judge had dismissed her. The cute girl attitude doesn't last long, however, when the judge holds her in contempt and gives her extra jail time. She suddenly transforms, flipping him off. The judge got furious and held her in contempt again. Looks can really be deceiving.
Come back, ma'am. Come back. Come back. Give me the paper again. Count 1 will be 10,000.
Are you serious?
I am serious. Adios.
The savagery of this judge was no match to that of Judge John Murphy, though. Judge John Murphy met his rival with prosecutor Andrew Weinstock in an assault and resisting arrest charge that Weinstock insisted went to trial. When Judge Murphy couldn't have it his way, he went into a verbal scuffle with Weinstock before flat out telling him to square up outside for a fight.
If you want to fight, let's go out back and I'll just beat your ass.
Both men decided to do it the Old West style and can be heard outside the courtroom, and moments later, the victorious Judge Murphy re-enters. Hopefully, someone checked on Weinstock. It seems prosecutors burning out from judges is a common theme, like the next prosecutor, who just couldn't take it anymore. After an argument with a judge over another prosecutor not showing up to court, prosecutor Mark Sleeper tried his best, but Judge Walliver kept interrupting him, when clearly the judge was at fault, knowing about the prosecutor's unavailability. When the judge kept trying to school Sleeper like a schoolchild, he decided to just walk out and not continue the case.
Okay, okay, your objection's noted.
We had a phone status conference 2 weeks ago in which Ms. Schiff will...
Your objection is noted. Okay?
I'm not going to participate in this proceeding without the elected county prosecutor. I think this is a sham that you're going forward. When the court was...
You're going to sit here. You're going to sit here.
You were told about her unavailability and specifically told her on the phone not to cancel that appointment, that it wouldn't be a problem.
Well, I'll tell you what. If you want to be here for the decision, that's your business.
Well, Your Honor, I think this is outrageous. You're going forward without the prosecutor.
While these judges were still somewhat harmless in the case itself, a judge's mistrial can cause havoc, like what happened with the trial of Leon Davis. Leon Davis was charged with the murder of 4 victims, including 2 he brutally set on fire while alive, and the worst part of it is, one of them was 5 months pregnant. The court became the scene of a tragedy, however, when an EMT's testimony forced the judge to declare a mistrial. It set one of the victims' families over the edge. Wanting revenge for their daughter and having lost faith in the court system, they decided to attack Davis themselves. While all of these were blood-boiling and terrible, some criminals you just find amusing, like Dale Lester Morris. After an attempt to rob a bank, Dale Lester Morris showcases his incredible legal knowledge, or lack thereof, in court. Dale goes on a very thorough explanation of how he did nothing illegal, despite admitting he robbed the bank. If you're confused, you're not wrong, because nothing he said made sense.
Okay, I'm sorry I'm getting high strong again, but I love the Constitution.
After going on about the Constitution and things no one in the entire court could understand, the judge couldn't help but smile at Morris's nonsense. Frankly, it came off a bit likable. This wasn't the only funny incident in a courtroom, though, because an online Zoom call turned out to be hilarious because of one username. Nathaniel SAXTON logged into an online court hearing through Zoom for his drug paraphernalia charges, but what he didn't notice was that his username had been changed to ButtEffer3000. The judge certainly didn't find it amusing and went on a rant, with SAXTON seemingly having absolutely no idea how this had happened. The judge was so furious that he insulted SAXTON and sent him to the waiting room. Turned out that SAXTON's sister had played a prank on him, and he really was innocent, at least of this, not the whole drug thing.
Your Honor,
yes?
if I may explain, my sister was the one that set up my Zoom account or whatever.
Speaking of a judge's throwing a rant, Judge Richard Scotty knows that all too well. During a hearing for a child rape trial, one juror couldn't take it, given her history as a nurse helping young women in similar situations. She asks Judge Richard Scotty if she cannot attend, and he goes off, reprimanding her for coming up with an excuse.
That's not going to happen, all right? Because if I find that someone says something yesterday under oath and changes it because they're trying to fabricate something to get out of serving on this jury, there's going to be repercussions.
The judge completely ignored all meaning of trauma and just couldn't sympathize with the juror, taking it as far as throwing a book against the wall and maybe being a tiny bit too much in his exaggeration. Like a professor who really dislikes that one student leaving his class, the judge kept going and arguing until asking her to leave, which is what she wanted in the first place, so yeah, he really got her.